Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Earn More Tutoring, episode 60. I'm so excited today because I have an incredible guest, Tera Sumpter. And Tera, I first learned about Tera because I heard about her from actually one of the participants in my executive function coaching academy. And they were just saying how impressed they were with what she'd done in terms of teaching about executive functioning from the lens of a speech language pathologist. And so as I started to learn more about Tera's work, I was so impressed by the community she's created, by her clinic in Cleveland. That's right?
Yep, outside
Cleveland.
of Cleveland.
Yeah, Seeds of Learning. And also just the following and information that she's created on social media. So welcome to the show, Tera.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. And so, the mission of Earn More Tutoring is to eradicate educator poverty. We're out here trying to help educators realize that they have so many gifts and that they don't necessarily have to constrain themselves to one particular preordained path in education. And, I know speech language pathology goes beyond education in a way. It's also a health related field, but I think
It's
there's
a
a lot
medically
of
based field too.
yeah, medically based, but I think that there's a lot of intersections where educators, if they're speech language pathologists listening, educational therapists, they'll probably be able to learn a lot from your story. So why don't we start out, Tera? Why don't you tell us what you do in your own words?
Okay, that's a loaded question. Where do I start? Yeah, I'm a speech language pathologist, but I do specialize in executive functioning. And we really specialize in executive functioning and its role in speech language and literacy development, which ends up, creating the foundation for all academic learning. And so we really end up addressing a lot of aspects within learning in general that children face, from preschool all the way through college. So in short, that's what we do. Like you'd mentioned, I have a private practice. We have 2 office locations outside of Cleveland, Ohio. And then I do a lot of presenting nationally and internationally, teaching people about the importance of executive functioning and how it's so incredibly foundational to all of our early learning from the time that we're born. It really is critical to how a child connects with their environment, and how information gets processed, sort of implicitly. A lot of our early learning is very implicit in nature. So it's important that we have a strong connection through our executive functioning system to our environment and to others in it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely, as you were talking, and I've known how invested you are in kind of educating people on executive function
Mm-hmm.
skills. I wanted to ask, like, what was your wake up to the importance of executive functioning skills?
Oh, that's such a good question. I don't know if anybody's asked me it quite that way before. I love that. My awakening, I would say, really was, well, there were a couple of aha moments for me. The first was probably in graduate school when we were learning about language development. And I always felt like there were some pieces to how it was being presented, like language development in childhood, that just didn't make sense. It just, to me, there were just holes. Like there were, and so I couldn't quite, I didn't know at the time what it was that I was missing, but I knew something didn't fit, just didn't make sense. And then once I got out and started practicing, as a practicing clinician, then that's when I really saw that as I was trying to do my job as a speech language pathologist, that I couldn't, with some of my students, I couldn't get the information in to their central nervous system. It was like there was this just wall that I couldn't get the information in. And so here I was trying to present all of this content, right? But the child wasn't connecting with their environment. And so that was really my biggest aha moment, was when I was working as a therapist. And at that point, it was pretty early in my career, really probably the first year out, that I started diving into the fields of cognitive psychology, neuroscience, to really figure out what was going on. And the first time I went to a big seminar on executive functioning, I was like, here's what I've been missing. And that for me started, a decade and a half long journey down this massive rabbit hole of research, and then synthesizing. I always say, I eat and read research for breakfast. It's what I do when I drink my coffee in the morning. It's an illness, and my husband thinks I'm nuts. But I'm constantly reading research and then taking it back into clinical practice and trying to implement it. And so, it just, I guess, to step back a little bit, and for this is particular for speech language pathologists, executive functioning gets talked about, at least in our training, predominantly in terms of TBI, which is traumatic brain injury. So in the context of adults, usually. So we think about the damage that's done to the frontal lobe with concussions and traumatic brain injury, and that's the context in which we learn about executive functioning. I never was trained. The majority of people that I speak to tell me how they never were talked about, or they were never experienced someone talking about executive functioning in relation to child development from birth on, right? It was always seen as an adult type of skill.
Yeah. So kind of what I'm hearing, and I'd love for you to kind of elaborate on what I'm saying or clarify, but where we're usually hearing about executive function skills is like if someone's in a car crash, or let's say some type of situation where they have damage to their frontal lobe. Yep. And they lose the ability to maybe sequentially process or, go through a series of steps. But what you're kind of trying to advocate for is it's that, but it's also, it can be fostered and supported in the development of a child. And tell me more about that, because I know you're coming from kind of like a language basis. What's the connection between the development of executive function skills and language?
So great question. So executive functioning, really what it is when we think about the system, it's a multi-layered system. It's an extremely complex system that develops over the course of, a solid 25, for people who are delayed in executive functioning, sometimes the development continues into early 30s. So this is a very long process of development that starts right away when a child is born. And all you have to do is observe a baby, and you see them taking everything in their environment in. Babies actually have really great attention, and their attention to their environment is how they learn imitation, the ability to imitate. And babies start imitating very, very early, weeks, right? And so, gesturally and vocally, they start imitating very, very early. Imitation becomes the skill that we see and can measure that the executive functioning system is doing what it needs to be doing in the way of perceiving the environment, right? So perception. Am I aware of my environment? Am I aware of the people and objects in my environment? Am I aware of myself? Am I aware of my actions, my thoughts, my feelings, my perceptions, all of those things? So that's really the first step is, am I aware of these different things in my environment? And this is critical to development, because if you take a child, and we think about language development, right? Most children don't need explicit instruction in language. Most children just learn it through osmosis, right? Like they're just in their environment and they soak it in. And it's just this incredible aspect of development to watch happen, right? It's like, where did they hear that? How did they come up with that? How did they generate that? And what's happening is that the child is implicitly learning from all the stimuli in their environment. But the implicit learning can only take place if the child perceives their environment, can self-direct their attention, so monitor where their attention is going, and then sustain attention long enough for the information to come in. That's really the foundation. Now, we could talk about working memory and working memory's role in that as well, because the working memory is also part of the executive functioning system, and it's a really critical component. And that has to be strong enough to be able to hold on to the information long enough for other parts of speech and language processing to actually do the processing. But all the learning starts with this fundamental nature of, do I perceive my environment? Can I focus to it? Can I sustain attention to it? And can my brain hold on to the information long enough for the workers, I call them the worker bees, like the workers, the doers in the brain, to be able to process the information. And when there's a breakdown within that foundation, perception, focus, sustained attention, working memory, we see huge gaps in various aspects of language.
Wow. Yeah, that's such an excellent explanation of kind of the burgeoning nature of the executive function system. Now, I've got a curveball for you here, which is how do you, it seems from my vantage point that social media has been designed to actually intercept our executive function system and like redirect it momentarily, right? It's like it catches our attention with all this stimuli. And I'm curious how how do you balance that, with, wanting to improve people's executive function, but at the same time wanting to deliver them valuable content. It's like you're like almost like the Che Guevara in social media, like, revolutionary, like, all right, I'm not going to distract you. I'm actually going to strengthen your expertise or, executive function skills. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think we could look at this from the standpoint of technology in general, right? And we could start by talking about screens and how screens impact learning. And we know that it's significant, right? And what is it that screens are replacing within development of a child? So screens are replacing play, which play is critical for sensory integration, the reduction of primitive reflexes in the brain, which all becomes a foundation for our executive functioning system, which is the children, they problem solve. Alison Gopnik, who is a psychologist and philosopher, she's written an amazing book called The Philosophical Baby, where she talks about that in her book, how babies are run more experiments every day in play than the most reputable scientists. And I highly recommend the book. It's really fantastic. And but the idea is that play provides that opportunity to be able to be problem solving and learning the cause and effect along with all of the sensory stimulation. The other thing that play does in various aspects of development is that it really strengthens what's called our nonverbal working memory. And our nonverbal working memory is essentially our imagination. It's our brain's ability to create an internal map of the external world. And so what's happening when we put a screen in front of a child is that now, instead of the child developing an internal map from a three-dimensional object where they're getting all of the sensory input, what does it feel like? What's the texture? How big is it? Right? How hard is it? All of those bits of sensory information become really, really critical to how the brain develops an internal map for learning. Now the child's learning from a two-dimensional representation of the object itself. So it's like this half step that they're creating mental representations based off of a representation of the actual object. And there's information lost in translation, right? So the screens in and of themselves become very problematic for multiple reasons. How that translates into adults, I think we could talk about how social media and technology, we're decreasing the need to delay gratification, which delaying gratification is inhibition, which is an executive functioning skill, as I'm sure you know. So that inhibition, being able to wait, right? I actually put a video reel on my Instagram, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe longer, I don't know. But it was of a plane. I had taken a video of the clouds from a flight that I was on. And I asked people, how long can you wait till the end of the video and just simply watch the clouds? And the responses were fabulous. They were really, really interesting because people talked about how, wow, normally I would have just kept scrolling. Because what we're looking for is that instant gratification, not being able to delay the gratification. And then at the end, I said, the reel, if you were able to hang out and stay here the whole time, like post an emoji, and so that provided the reward of somebody being able to say like, yes, I did it. But they had to delay that. There was this like need to inhibit right? A desire to delay the gratification. All of those skills become critical to how we achieve all aspects of success in our lives. Any kind of goal-oriented directive, any kind of goal-oriented, direction towards a desire, whether that be family, whether that be career, requires us to inhibit the now in order to reach what we want in the future, right? So, in a big way, we see this is with exercise and weight loss, right? That's so hard because right now I want the cookie, and the payoff for not eating the cookie, is going to be a lot further down the road. So when we decrease someone's ability to delay gratification, then we set them up with their only functioning in the now. And they can't see far enough into the future and restrain themselves for a future goal. And all of that really plays into, those are some of the big executive functioning skills we work on with, middle school, high school, college age students. Being able to see the future, what are these goals, and how do we make decisions now that lead us to those goals in the future. But most of the time when we're looking at a future directed goal of some kind, there's inhibition that has to take place now, right? In order to achieve that. Because otherwise we'd just be focusing like stimulus response constantly, pinging from one thing to the next, instead of saying, nope, I'm not going to scroll right now because I'm focused on working on a book, whatever it is.
Yeah, I call it doom scrolling, when you're just scrolling through social media aimlessly, from one stimuli to the next.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you asked me about social media because, I do have a relatively large following, but I don't spend a lot of time on social media. And I don't do a lot of interacting with other accounts on social media. Because for me, I'm very mindful of where my energy and my time goes. I'm highly distracted, like distractible. Inhibition is not my strong suit at all in terms of my executive functioning system. So I've had to learn over the years, like, where can I put my attention and where should I not? Because I'll lose massive amounts of time if I'm not careful.
Yeah, no, that's good that you've kind of developed the executive function skills to manage it and inhibit, the doom scrolling. Tell us about the journey to growing your social media to the size it is now. Like, and I know it's not all about the size, it's more about the engagement, but I know that there's a high level of engagement on your Instagram account. I can see people really getting value from it and learning from it. It doesn't seem like a passive audience. It seems like a very engaged audience. So tell us about growing that engaged audience, and what advice would you have for someone who's knows they have a lot of, knowledge and expertise to offer, but isn't good with social media or doesn't know what to do?
Yeah. Okay. So, and I think this is hilarious that you're asking me this question because I am not a techie person at all. I'm not really a social media person either. So it's funny how I've ended up here. But I would say, how did I grow it? It really was, I was saying something different, right? What I was sharing was looking at child development and academic learning in a way that a lot of people, it was a conversation that wasn't being had on social media as far as I could see. And so I think that piqued people's interest, for one. I'm also not afraid of having hard conversations. I'm not afraid of, I don't want to offend people, but I'm not afraid to stand very firm in what I believe and my experiences and what I've read and learned over the years. So I'm willing to engage in hard conversations. I'm willing to, I'm willing to really have the hard conversations. I guess that's the best way to say it. I don't shy away from maybe conversations that people don't tend to want to have because they're afraid of offending people. That brings me to kind of my next point about social media is I think it's really important to be authentic. I think people feel like they know me because I'm myself, and they know where I stand on things. They know how I feel. I'm willing to say, we're getting it wrong over here. Our field is getting it wrong. And we need to be looking in other directions. I'm not afraid. I'm not trying to please everybody. I know there are a lot of people who I'm sure don't like my work, and that's fine. I'm not for them. So being authentic is really, really important. If your goal is for everyone to like you, don't be on social media. So that's really, you do have to have, I don't like the term like thick skin, because it's not that you have to have thick skin on social media, but you have to know how to take the criticism and then get rid of it. Sort of, Brene Brown calls it shame resiliency, which I love.
What's an example of something where you brought up or addressed a topic that was polarizing, where you took a stance that maybe you got some difficult feedback or things that, I'm curious.
Yeah. So I would say like literacy is a topic that tends to be very heavily emotionally fueled. And so when I talk about literacy, I talk about the importance of executive functioning and its role in literacy. And that can sometimes really jar people because it's a new way of looking at it. Educators spend a lot of time getting educated in programs and curriculums, but that's very different than being educated in the science and the neuroscience behind something, right? A curriculum and a program, their company is trying to make money. So they always have an angle to what they're doing. A great podcast on that actually is called Sold a Story. Have you heard of this?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, you should check it out. It's really
okay. Good to know. It kind of give us the synopsis.
She's an educator. Oh, I can't remember her name. I can look it up. But she's the woman who put together the podcast. It's 6 episodes. She's an education reporter, and she's been she's been researching literacy and just how literacy is taught in education for a really, really long time. And it's basically about curriculums and how curriculums get steam and how companies push agendas based on a program or a curriculum when the science behind it is pretty weak, but it becomes money fueled. It's a really, really fascinating podcast for people who are interested in literacy. It shines a light on some very great topics.
Right. Yeah. And that makes sense because, as you go through public education, there's so much indoctrination to like, this is the way things should go. And, the whole administration's on board. And if you say, well, actually, it's, what I'm learning is that, it's better actually for kids to develop self-regulation skills so they can learn math and reading rather than just focusing on math and reading.
Right.
It's like, what are you talking about? So that's really okay. So what I'm hearing you say kind of is that first off, it sounds like it stems from your ability to steep yourself in the research and then challenge these social norms or educational norms and put that out there into social media to kind of like jolt people a little bit is a way to start. I've heard people talk about like polarizing your audience in the sense that you want to attract people who are going to be interested in it and want to learn from it and kind of repel people who are like, oh, I can't deal with that. Or, it's not for me.
For sure. I mean, again, I believe that especially, because this podcast is for people who might be interested in starting a business or something outside of, their normal, whatever, outside of a teaching career or what have you. But I think as a business owner, because I have several businesses, and it's so important to know who your audience is. And when you're yourself, when you are authentic, right, in your presentation, you're going to attract your audience. It's funny, I've been presenting my material to organizations and school districts for a very long time now. And at first, when I first started presenting, I tell my husband, like, I'm trying to reach everybody. And my husband gave me the best advice. He said, you're not trying to reach everybody. You're not going to. Not everybody in that room is there to be your audience today. You have to find the people who are your audience, and those are the people that you invest in, because they're the ones who are going to make a difference in the lives of children, right? And I was like, he said, you're wasting your energy by trying to rope in people who just aren't interested. I was like, that's
Right.
great. It's like, that's brilliant.
Yeah, no, good partner. Shout out to the Seagos. I call them significant others.
Yeah.
They're so
Well,
helpful on the journey.
they really are. And I'm so thankful because my husband spent his career in finance. And then this past summer, he left corporate America altogether to join my business. So we're now officially a family owned business, and he helps me with all the business stuff, and which is not my favorite part. Again, like my happy place is with my nose in a book
Yeah,
or in a therapy session or with teaching other people. It's not the business or the finance or, so I can
yeah.
offload that to him. But yeah, it's
Congrats,
really,
congrats, and that's
thank
probably his
you.
favorite part. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I always talk about, especially with neurodivergent individuals, playing to your strengths. Like one of my
Yes.
friends, Aaron, he sent me this article, and he said, you don't. It was all about the idea that you don't have to be good at everything. You have to just be really good at one thing,
Yep.
and then you're going to be the point person, or the kind of focal point for information on that one thing. But if you try to do everything, you won't be necessarily attractive for anything.
Yep.
So it's good to remember, like, you could just be good at really, really, really good at one thing, a specialist. So
I agree with that 100%. And that's something with particularly our high school and college students, it's helping them discover that. That's a big part of our work with them, is helping them figure out, what is it that you really love? What is it that you really want to learn more about? What lights you on fire, right? What are you passionate about? Because particularly when, for our ADHD folks, that we need to love what we're doing. We can hyper focus on it, right? That's where all of our attention goes. And we may struggle more with non-preferred activities. But if we can pigeonhole ourselves in a way, in terms of a career and a path, that's something we love, then it really plays to our strengths, like you were saying.
yeah, so thank you for sharing that. And also, one of my favorite, like, quotes, I kind of like live off like little rhyming quotes. They help me guide my journey. As they said, the riches are in the niches. And
Oh, I
that
like
really
that.
stuck out to me because, at first I was like, man, when I created my course, Become an Online Executive Function Specialist. And I was like, man, that is so specific. Is anyone going to show up for this? Like, am I going to be able to find anyone? But like, the craziest thing happened when I created that course and I created the landing page for it and described what you get from it and everything. I was like, I don't know, but it wasn't out there when I was trying to become an executive function coach. So let's see. And Google immediately put it as the snippet, like the like, do you want, if someone types in, how do I become an executive function coach? I broke it down into steps and it became the snippet. And it's like, I just get all this organic traffic, but I didn't anticipate that at all. I only created that to teach people who wanted to apply to work for me, but it ended up being this
Mm.
magnet. So I guess, the idea there is, don't be afraid to get really specific. I guess there's probably like a point of diminishing returns if you're like, I'm a juggling garden expert. Like, that might not be, the best, point of, or kind of way to niche down. But
I
yeah,
think I think that's really true. And in my field of speech language pathology, it's so funny because last night in my online educational community, I actually did a 2-hour office hour with everybody, and all I talked about was business. They were really curious about my path to private practice and how I developed my private practice, how I've structured it, advice I would give from 12 years running a private practice, which, because there have been a lot of lessons and they're not all fun being a business. But that was one of the things, we talk about in my field in private practice a lot, is how a niche really does help. I'm here in the Cleveland area. I guess you could say competitors. I don't really think of people as, I prefer to think of people as collaborators as opposed to competitors. But, I have the Cleveland Clinic in my backyard. We have another very large hospital organization as well that Cleveland Clinic would see as their competitor, University Hospitals. I can't compete with those organizations. But, I have created for myself, not intentionally to compete with anybody, but simply because it was what my interest was. But I've created a niche for myself in the way of executive functioning and its role in child development and child learning. And so now our number one referral source is the Cleveland Clinic because
Right.
nobody else does it. So yeah, I think having a niche can be very, very beneficial when it comes to business.
Yeah. So, okay. So what I'm hearing, for people listening or maybe we're just jumping in, and reminder, anybody who's listening out there, feel free to drop a comment or a question into the chat box. We may be able to answer it, or Tara can answer it for you while we're live streaming this. But what I'm hearing is, one, you've got to be knowledgeable about your subject. Two,
Mm-hmm.
you have to not be afraid to share your expertise, which might challenge some norms in your
Yep.
field or in the larger
Mm-hmm.
field. Three, it's okay to niche down. What's, I kind of want to know more about the technical, or I guess the kind of like process of building your following on social media. So obviously
Okay.
you want to have those things, but how do you be consistent about it when, I know you're a mother of three, you've got three businesses, married, all these different things. How do you find the time in the process to continually be present for your audience on social media, in addition to being present in all those other endeavors?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And I would say, as a mother of three, the biggest thing I have learned is that there's no such thing as balance. Something always gives, right? The more time that I spend with my family, oh, here we go.
Look at that. We've got a special guest. Aliana, you gotta go. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. This is live for you. This is for real live.
I love it. Oh, it's so good. Oh yeah, you still have a little one. My
Yes, I got
youngest is
two little ones in the house, and they're both homesick, but grandma is here helping out. So that was not staged or scripted. I'm gonna close this door.
yeah, go for it. Oh, it's so funny. I mean, that was COVID, right? When we were home all the time with COVID, like you never knew what you were going to see in the background. It's so true.
Yes, no, that's a classic. That's
I love it.
perfect. But sorry, so you were saying
I have
yes. So
two kids homesick today too. I have three girls, but my oldest two. I have a 13. She's almost 14,
yeah,
and then 12-year-old, and then I have a 9-year-old. So,
I have two girls, so we have five together.
oh my gosh, I know it's a lot of estrogen. It is definitely it's
I
a
love
lot.
it.
It's a lot. Okay, so how do I do it all? I think the first thing is to remember that there really is no such thing as balance. I think we've like thrown out this idea, this like toxic positivity of like, you can do it all, you can have it all. I mean, you can have it all, but something always gives, right? When I'm at work late, I don't see my children quite as much, or, so there's never this equal balance. And I had to give up looking for that equal balance and let it go as a mother. I mean, mom guilt's like all over the place. And so I had to let go of a lot of that to be able to just continue with what I wanted to do in terms of my career, and also feel like I'm showing up as a mom as much as I do. How am I consistent with social media? I'll be honest with you. I find the process of Instagram to be very creative, and I like that. So for me, it's fun. It feels challenging. So I actually enjoy creating the graphics. So I don't have a team. I am me on social media. People are always shocked because a lot of the big accounts have teams that create graphics and that, post it and interact and know how to do all the fancy stuff. I don't have any of that. It's literally me with my coffee cup with underneath my Afghan and like in my big cozy chair. And that's me on social media. So, I think I enjoy it. So that's one thing. I like the creative process, and I fit it in. Usually, I do it a lot in the morning when I first get up. So I have a routine as to when I develop it. I don't really have a system. I would say, I know some people like plan it out and they have a schedule of when they post things. I'll be honest, I wake up in the morning and I think to myself, what's really resonating with me today? What is it? And I just throw it out there. Sometimes I get more creative with the graphics if I have more time. Other times, my post today was, it was just, I use a pink background, which I think consistency within your posting has been helpful for me, because when people see how I've formatted my post, they know it's me. So I think that sort of recognition, brand recognition, is helpful. But today it was just, what did I say? I said, you know, addressing speech and language without executive functioning is like trying to wash the dishes without water. You can do it, but it's not as effective.
Yeah.
And that was it. And it was simply a thought that I had. And I just started, and then I wrote a caption about it, and that was it. And I was done. 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And then I just keep it routine every day, as to when I, when I post.
Yeah. That's
I don't
great.
know.
Yeah.
There's no magic. I mean, the magic is being consistent,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the magic is being authentic.
Yeah.
You know.
And also sounds like being like, I think where I get kind of hung up sometimes is feeling like I have to like create this amazing production and I have to have like all the right
Oh,
images. And it's like, it sounds like just showing up,
yeah.
and being there every day or,
Yep.
5 days a week or whatever. That is the magic, right? Is
It
like,
really is.
yeah,
It
that's
really,
really
and
refreshing.
yeah, and I think having good content is really important. You have to add value to the lives of the people that have chosen to be there with you. And so for me, it's how can I take what I've learned over the years and provide it to people for free, right? How can I educate? Like, if you notice when you go on my feed, I don't tend to on my feed post anything personal. Every once in a while I will, but it's pretty rare. I want someone to be able to go to my Instagram feed and get a whole bunch of executive functioning education in one spot. If people want to get to know me, that's what my story is for, and you'll get to see my kids and all the stuff. But the feed itself, I keep it strictly educational because I value education so much. And my goal with my career is to be able to help as many people as possible see the importance of executive functioning in all aspects of child development. So it's just sharing that over and over and over again, and sometimes making a fun reel. I don't do too many. I did for a little while and they were kind of fun. And then I was like, they took too much time. They took a lot of time that I didn't have. So I've had to figure out what can I put out? What content can I put out consistently that works with my life? Because I do have my hands in a lot, and there's a lot of projects always. So it has to feel manageable.
Yeah. So now that's making me think about the idea. Yeah. Simplifying it, being authentic, just, not trying to overcomplicate it. And then,
Mm-mm.
just, being consistent. How long do you think it takes to start actually seeing like a real following? You know what I mean? What I mean real is not necessarily
Yeah.
numbers, but like people engaging and like, okay, there's actually someone looking at this rather than me just talking into my phone. I'm curious, what your thoughts are
How
on that.
long?
Yeah.
I don't really know. I think you have to create content that people want to share. So
Mhm.
that's really important, because that's how you get in front of other people's audiences, right? Is that people want to share what it is that you're having to say. I didn't start my Instagram until COVID. So I didn't have Instagram. I mean, I had a personal Instagram, but I never used it. I was more on Facebook, I guess, so my grandma could see pictures of my kids. And, again, not huge on social media. But once we were kind of locked down, I was missing the regular social interaction that I was having, with my staff and with friends and that kind of thing. So I gravitated, I started Instagram. My kids taught me how to use it. My teenagers taught me how to use it, helped me set up my account. And I just started sharing. And I just started sharing what I was doing. And it just kind of exploded, I would say. I've had a couple of posts that went viral, and that really exploded my followers. So I think that was very helpful. But I had, for the first year, how many years has it been now? A couple years. The first year, I mean, it was steady organic growth. I think I had hit like 10,000 followers within the first year. But it was simply just organically sharing what I was doing and how it was new, right? And not being afraid to ruffle some feathers. I thought of, after you asked me the question of like, what was something that I say that ruffles people's feathers? There is one really big thing in my field that I stand up to. He's like, give it to me. What is it? So in the speech and language world, there's a framework that we break language down into. It's very old. It's like, why are we still quoting this very old research? I don't know. Yeah. But one of the things that's funneled under language is what we call pragmatics, which is social communication. It's how we socially interact, right? And social interaction, social communication, pragmatics is not language. Language is a tool that we sometimes, not even the majority of the time, because most of our interaction is nonverbal, but some of the time we use language as a tool for our social interaction. But difficulty with pragmatics, when children are having difficulty with peers and peer relationships, this is because there's a breakdown in executive functioning. They're not perceiving the peer. They're not sustaining attention to the peer and the peer's interests. They may have difficulty inhibiting themselves. So the child and the peer are going down the slide, but the child wants to keep going down the slide. So they don't inhibit long enough to let the friend take a turn, right? They're not self-monitoring to say like, oh, my friend wants to take a turn and I didn't. I didn't let them take a turn. I didn't inhibit. And so therefore I need to say I'm sorry and I need to self-correct that. That's how we maintain relationships, right? Self-monitoring, self-correction, self-evaluation, all of that is executive functioning. When I talk about that, people in my field are like, because it's very different from what we're taught.
Yeah, because they're probably saying, oh, if you just teach them this phrase, or you teach them how to talk this way, then it's going to fix things. But it's like, no, it's everything under the surface.
That's right.
Like all these different kind of behaviors, not behaviors, I guess, but a process.
Yeah. And when you think about what the executive functioning system does, so the executive functioning system acts like a cuer. So it's the system that's cueing the workers to do their job, right? You could think of it like a director of a play. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you go to see a play, what you're judging are the actors. And Tom Hanks, as great of an actor as he is, he might look terrible in this play. He might be coming in at an odd time. He might be saying something in a strange way. So it might be that he's a bad actor. Or it's that the director who's behind the scenes, behind the curtain, right? The one behind the scenes gave poor cueing. Mm-hmm. Told him to come in at the wrong time, told him to say it a certain way, and didn't execute. The director didn't give the proper execution cues. So when we talk about this in the context of pragmatics, right? But here's the important part about executive functioning is that what we assess and what we judge are the actors.
Right.
We say Tom Hanks didn't do a good job and so didn't look good on stage. Right? Because that's what we measure. When we give standardized testing, that's what we measure. We measure the doers, the performers. We don't have very good tools to measure the cuer. And so, and all of the big name researchers in the field of executive functioning will tell you that standardized assessment is not only the worst way to assess executive functioning. Russell Barkley goes as far to say, it's negligent, which is pretty powerful. Wow. So, yeah. So here we have, this idea of this cuer. So what does this look like for pragmatic development in children? Well, we can teach the worker, the doer, the performer, the actor, we can teach them the script and they can spit it off. But does the cuer cue them to use it at recess? Does the cuer cue them to use it with this in this situation differently when they're in the classroom, right? Or if they're in the library, or if they're at soccer, like all of these different settings, the cuer has to be the one that cues the performer, the actor, the doer. And so again, we see this in my field, we see this all the time because we work on pragmatics a lot. And, we'll work on script after script. This is what we say. We say, good morning, goodbye, all these scripts. That's not the problem. The children can learn the scripts. The issue becomes, can they cue themselves to use them appropriately, although I don't love the word appropriate, but in a situation for the goal the child wants. If the child wants to make friends, then they have to be perceiving, we're back to perception, perceiving, focusing, sustaining attention to the peers to see when to cue different communication initiations, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, wow. And that just makes me think about how it must be so hard for kids with autism because they're missing a lot of those cues often, potentially.
yes.
Whereas, so it's like you're not just teaching the language, you're teaching how do you pick up on the nonverbal language, on the very nuanced cues, which even me as an adult, I probably miss a lot of cues. My wife would tell you that I miss cues all the time. So it's a very kind of different way, different way of thinking about how to teach development and better executive function skills is kind of looking at the director or the source rather than all the different external displays of.
And that's the system. That's the system. That's the cognitive system of executive functioning. So, everything I do in terms of therapy and the therapy framework that I have developed, it's all about how do we improve, scaffold, strengthen the system, the processing system, because executive functioning in its most simplified definition, Russell Barkley, again, he calls it self-direction for a future goal is what he defines executive functioning as. But again, self-direction is from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
So if all we're doing is providing external cues and external tools, that's still not self-direction.
Mm-hmm.
Self-direction has to be coming from the inside out, saying, what is the goal? What do I need to be doing? What are the cues that I need to be looking for? What are the directives that I need to give my brain in order to reach these goals, right? We're in my field, we love to do, and we do too here at Seeds of Learning, we love to do visual schedules, right, for kiddos. If they can read, we might use words. If they can't read, we might use pictures. Getting ready for the day looks like this, brushing their teeth and having breakfast, putting on clothes, whatever it is. But it's really important that visual schedule becomes internalized. That we help take that visual schedule and create an internal map so that the child drives the execution of the routine from the inside out. If the picture schedule is always right there and it's never internalized, and we're not self-cueing from a mental representation from this internal map that we've created in our nonverbal working memory, then what we have is we have a child who constantly needs a reminder. Look at your visual schedule. Look at your visual schedule, right? That's external cueing.
Yeah.
And executive functioning is inside out, self-direction. How do I do it from the inside out?
Yeah. So that's really powerful to think, kind of flip the idea of how to teach executive functioning on its head, kind of communicate another way. And so by sharing those ideas via Instagram, you're kind of attracting people who are like, oh my God, I was thinking of it totally wrong. Or, parents are like, oh, they were just focused on external supports rather than trying to teach the internal stuff.
Right.
So my wonder for you is, how do you take, because I feel like social media is kind of the external of actually the courses that you teach or the clinic, or how do you get people from social media to take the next step in the customer relationship journey to learning more about, doing the real work of kind of, going from 15-second videos to actually like a course or, whatever you're teaching about?
Yeah. I believe wholeheartly that if my Instagram provides value, people will ask me where they can find more. And that's what happens. I have links to the book that I've published. that has been sold in, I don't even know. I mean, last time I counted, it was like 30 to 40 countries. I mean, it's insane how it blew up. And, I have links to that. I have links to my online educational network where there's tons of self-study courses and material and all my resources and 80 to 90 hours of office hour recordings. So I have links to all of that. And so when people ask, or if they come to my profile and they get curious, they'll go to my bio and, start poking around, and they'll see that I have other resources. Every once in a while, I will refer to something that I have, but I'm not out there selling because I think it turns people off. And ultimately, that's not, that's not my main goal, is not to be this billboard selling information. It's creating value. And when you give people value, they look for more. They want to learn more from you. I mean, people look at me and say, wow, you know a lot about this. I want to learn more about your therapy. And so then they are like, what other resources do you have? And then I'll say, you can go look at my bio, or here's some other places that you could look.
Yeah. So focusing on delivering value.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that naturally just creates curiosity. And I think a lot of educators out there, when they start this journey of trying to build their businesses, because they need clients to, make the transition, they really focus on like, come be a client. But that's the hard part, even though it makes sense, you need clients, you need to be paid for your services. So that's a real tough leap from going to like, kids have to show up at the public school to, I have to attract people. I can't just expect that they're going to come because I am in a position.
Right. And I can really appreciate that. I was in that position myself. When I left, I worked in the hospital setting before I started my private practice in 2011. And that was a hard leap. Am I going to get clients if I leave a job that I'm, getting paid for? And, that was definitely hard. So I've been there. I appreciate that a lot. I think it's important to remember that if you truly want an organic following and growth, and you want engagement, and you want people who trust you, you have to have patience. You have to have patience. You have to stay the course. If you're looking for like a quick fix, creating a quick Instagram following or social media following, I'm sure some people can do that. I don't know how effective that is long term. I mean, I'm sure maybe it is. I don't know. But I think you have to have patience, and you have to provide the value. People have to learn who you are, and then it becomes sort of word of mouth and snowballs from there.
Yeah. Or to put it in another way, you have to plant the seeds so they grow into seeds of learning.
This is flip. That's exactly right.
No, but I feel like that's a really good, I'm like tooting my own horn here, but like it is, it's funny because there's so many like gardening words that are related to growing your social media, right? You have to like get an organic following. You can't just like, dump GMOs and their paid ads.
That's so good. I like that.
So that's really valuable. And it's like, it's interesting because, this is my 60th episode.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And it's like, the lesson is always the same. Like, give value, be patient, continue to invest. And so that's the kind of the message that I hope people take away is like, there's no quick, results. It's you investing in your, delivering value to your audience, being kind of like a servant, in a positive way, not a like, but like, trying to provide them something that's going to help them on their journey. And it can help you, right? Like this always helps me to learn from people like you, but I know I'm also sharing this with my audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you don't provide value and you're just a billboard, I mean, it's really going to turn people off. I think, a lot of times I think about when I'm creating a post, I think about what would I want to see, right? If I was going on social media looking for this kind of information, what would I want to see? And you don't want to look like everybody else, because then they can just go, I don't want to be saying, I don't want the cookie cutter information out there. What is it that I can say and do and put out there that's different? And so it catches people's attention. But yeah, I mean, you have to be patient. I think if you're talking about educators who are wanting to potentially leave and start something new, maybe you can start the social media before you leave, so that you start getting some traction, before then, before you're really meeting the clients. Or but yeah, I think if truthfully, time and time again, and a lot of people who you read to that talk about social media, that it's got to be organic. You have to show up consistently, and you have to provide value. And saying "go buy my book" does not provide value. So
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Even
it's
though it
funny
probably
because,
does, but you got to
well,
build
I mean,
that trust. Yeah.
right. I mean, I think my book provides value. And my sales have shown that it's providing value, because again, the only way I've marketed my book is through my social media, and it's sold like crazy. So, and that's not because of my social media. That's because of word of mouth. That's because people are telling other people about my book. You need to go read this. And so, that's organic right there, and people finding the value. But, there was a point, and I was going to say about, the go buy my book, but I would never say, but that's what it was. I get DMs a lot where people will ask me, here's my profile, right? I'm a kindergarten teacher, and this is my class, and this is what will your book be good for me? And I always say, I don't know if my book will be good for you. I can tell you what other kindergarten teachers have told me their response was to the book, but I can't tell you whether or not it's right for you, because I don't know you. But it's funny that I get asked that a lot. And again, I think people respect the fact that I'm not trying to sell them.
Mm-hmm.
I could easily say, yes, you should 100% go buy my book. It is the best thing it will change your teaching career. But I don't know that.
Right.
So honest, I don't know if this is right for you. Only you can make the decision for yourself. But I can tell you what other people have said about it.
Right. It's almost like the anti-sell to sell, which I think is another level to selling, in a good way.
Do you? I've never
Well, I'm
thought
just
about
thinking,
it that way.
no, not like your intention, like I'm telling, but it's more like I had someone who wanted to sign up for my course the other day, and they said, I only want to work with younger kids, and you focus on middle, high school, and college students. Is this good for me? And I was like, basically the same thing. I was like, I don't know. I know being around a community of executive function coaches will help. But the reason I did that is because I don't want someone coming in and then being mad that I sold them this. And then they're like, give me a refund. And now that's taking more time out of my day. And, it's like, I can't focus on what I actually do well. So I think that's a really good strategy. Not a strategy, but, I feel like strategy has a bad connotation, but a good approach, to nurturing your audience and not being like this kind of guru that can't follow through. It's like, well, you should executively decide for yourself.
You should executively function decide. I was going to say something else that I've been very intentional about my social media, which this would not be right for everybody, because when I look at other people with larger followings, they don't do this. But for me, it's really important to me. I believe that my word matters, and that my integrity matters. Therefore, I will never get paid for anything I say on social media. So I don't do any affiliations. I mean, the amount of messages and emails, DMs that I get from people like, can we collaborate? And you put this code. And I don't do any of that.
Yeah.
And I do that on purpose, because I want people to trust me that when I say, this is amazing, I'm saying it because I truly believe it's amazing, not because I'm getting paid for it. So, and whenever I come across something and I do recommend it, I always say, like, I am not paid to say this. Like, I'm saying this because I really believe it. Now, I know a lot of people who do affiliations. I don't even know what they're all called. Affiliates. I don't know. And I have no judgment about that whatsoever. People need to make money how they need to make money. I just know that for myself, I'm more comfortable when I'm putting out into the world something, the only thing, and this is actually something I'm going to add into my bio, I'm going to put in financial disclosures so people know exactly how I make money. I make money off my book, royalty off my book. I make money from my online educational community, and I get a salary from my private practice. There it is.
Yeah.
And I don't take anything else.
Yeah.
Because I want my word to mean something to
Yeah.
people.
That's really powerful. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, I'll have to think about that because I do sell things as an affiliate for things I really believe in or my
Yeah.
team members champion. Like this planner is the best. It's helped all my students. But it's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, it's a nice. But I also have that disclosure like, hey, this is an affiliate sale.
Yep.
But so I think that upfrontness, like, hey, just so you know, I'm talking about this because I believe in it and I don't make like that's very powerful.
Yeah. I think it's important to, for sure, we have to be telling people if we're getting paid for something, like this is an affiliate sale. I do get, kickback. I recommend so many books. I've had so many other, it's funny. The young influencers have taught me how to do social media. They'll be like, Tera, you should do this. And I'm like, okay, because I'm old and I don't know. But I had one, she said, she kind of looks out for me on social media. She's so sweet. But she said, you recommend so many books, you really should start an Amazon store and people can go and buy it through there. And I was just kind of like, I don't know, like, I guess I could, but I never want somebody questioning why I'm saying that this is one of the best books I've ever read. Like, but I don't, that's just me. I have no judgment either way. Oh, what I was going to say about that though, is that there are a lot of people who are not forthcoming about saying that something's sponsored or that they're an affiliate sale. That is a problem. That's something that social media people within my field have been talking about quite a bit, is that we have problems on Facebook a lot with people controlling a narrative based on a sale of something. So it's influencing a lot of people to think about a research evidence-based practice in a certain way, but it's being driven by money. So there are some big problems out there, at least in my field around that. So
yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, it goes really deep when you're talking about if a researcher is paid to thumbs up a study on a drug or something that they don't necessarily believe in, but their credentials allow them to authorize it or kind of sign off on it. That's really dangerous. Yeah, so I can see how that could well,
even as
grow.
simple, even as simple as products that people, in my field would create, and then they pay affiliates who have big followings to share it and delete comments that might say anything negative about that product. This all happens, and it happens pretty rampantly. And so, I mean, it's something we have to look out for. I think it's important that we're all very ethical as we can be on social media, because it does make an impact. And the amount of misinformation that's shared on social media is also frightening, which is one reason that I don't really spend a ton of time. Like when I'm on social media, I'm on my page, commenting on my things in my DMs, and that's pretty much it. But people will send me DMs like, what do you think about this? And I'll be like, that is a poor analysis of that research study. It's not right. But I'm not going to go out there as the police. I don't have time for that. Yeah. But we have to be careful. We have to do our own research on what we read on social media. I tell people, go fact check my stuff.
Yeah. It's really funny because I'm a Redditor, and I was looking at Reddit yesterday, and there was a one that said, what obsession do people have that's bad for them? And it was like asking all of Reddit, and I was like, what? I wonder what it is. So I clicked on it, and the top voted comment was the 24-hour news cycle. But I think it's also social media, right? Like 24 hours engaging, always checking. And then there was this quote below it, and it was by Denzel Washington, I believe. It said, the problem with news is if you don't read it, you're not informed. But if you do read it, you're misinformed. And not all news, of course. There's some really great, clear news out there. That's NPR. Shout out to NPR. But it's like with social media, right? If you don't engage, you're out of the loop. But if you do engage, you're kind of in a loop that might not be truthful, like you're saying, or there might be some kind of a lot of people who are promoting things without disclosing it, or it's like telling you to buy this supplement or this mushroom coffee,
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily the best thing for you.
And that's why problem solving is so important. I talk to my teenage daughters about this all the time. They'll bring me TikTok. They love TikTok, and yeah, I don't do TikTok. But they'll say, "Mom, look at this video I saw. It says that like this is happening." And I know right off the bat it's not true, but they don't know that. And so we talk about, okay, how do we problem solve this? How do we fact check this? So I've taught my daughters that when they see something like that, where do we go? Now, obviously, we know Google is going to pop up what we want to see. So, how do we comb through different sources to figure out what's true? What are some of the, what are some of the trusted sites that we can go to fact check things? But fact checking just has to be part of our life, because anybody can say anything on social media. So it really, we do have to take the power of knowledge into our own hands, fact check it before we disseminate, spread it.
Right. Else. But I just want everyone to know the earth is flat. No, I'm just kidding. I learned it on social media. Just kidding. It's not flat. But yeah, that's really powerful. That's a huge, a really beautiful skill to teach your kids. Like, okay, yes, it was said here, but you need to actually look at some research. Like there's a thing called peer review. There's journals of different, like how do you access information correctly?
And if we circle this back, if we pull our conversation full circle right back to what you asked me at the very beginning about bombarding people with information on social media, we've pulled it right back to the fact that we are bombarded with information. And so therefore, for probably the first time in a lot of humanity, we have to now take this information and filter it. And we have to fact check it. And it is a responsibility, I believe, as a part of society, that I do that I don't just take something I see at face value. I feel it's my own personal responsibility to say, oh, that's interesting. Let me go do some of my own reading and my own searching to see if this is actually true. Are there other sides to this coin? I always tell my daughters, if you have, and my clients too, if we have 2 points of view, neither of them are right. The answer is probably somewhere in the middle. And so it's the same with research. You can find research that says, the sky's blue and the sky's red, and then you're going to find out it's whatever. I'm giving an example. But, you can find research on either side of most topics too. You can find one study that was just done totally differently and gets a different result than something else. So again, everything has to be filtered, and we have to, I really see it as a responsibility of all of us to filter through the information that we're seeing every day. And that takes time.
Yeah. And it just made me think about, like, here, I'll use another gardening term, which is you have to disseminate the seed outward information to the best of your ability. That's true. And you can't go wrong with your own experience, right? But if you're spreading, like some type of medically or scientific based information, you as, with your training and background, you've learned how to comb through things, to evaluate sources and make, you're doing your best. Obviously, there's always going to be a little room for error in anything, but you're doing your best to bring the best of your expertise to your audience. And that's probably a great, place to start from if you're trying to grow your social media following, is what are you an expert in, because of your past experiences, education, training, all that you can kind of comb through everything and be like, look, I can tell you that this is going to be more valuable than this, or like, so that's, I think it's really interesting to come full circle with that and really realize, like, not professing expertise in something that you don't necessarily know a lot about. A bad way to grow your following.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm the first to say I'm really good at one thing. We talked about that earlier too. I am really, really good at one thing. But we get referrals, our name is known in this area for being great therapy providers. So we get calls for stuff all of the time. And sometimes it's not appropriate to what our specialty is. And so I'll say, you know what, I know somebody way better than me at AAC or at voice therapy or vocal dysfunction, whatever. You know, we're great at XYZ, but here, go see them because they're better. It is really important to know, to be able to filter through and know what you're good at. And don't try to be a master of everything, because it just ends up, it falls flat. You know, I think in people, makes it maybe hard for people to trust your information.
So I know we could go on for hours.
We probably could.
That's obvious.
Yeah.
But, you know, first off, I just want to thank you so much for being willing to come on to the show to educate me and my audience. I feel like it's been I'm really just happy about this conversation. I feel like I've learned a lot. If people want to connect with you, I know if you're watching this live, or if you're watching the video of this following on one of the Facebook groups or my LinkedIn, you know, you can see Tera's handle there. It's at Tera Sumpter _SLP. I'll definitely be putting that in the show notes. But, you know, how can people connect with you, Tera, if they want to kind of learn more about what you're offering?
Sure. So Instagram is probably the best way. That's where I'm the most active. I do have a Facebook page. I'm not too awfully active. It's the Seeds of Learning, or Seeds of Learning LLC, I think, on Facebook. You can check out my website, so terasumpter.com, and that has information to everything from my presentations to our private practice, our clinic. And then in terms of, if you're looking for more information about what I do have my book called The Seeds of Learning. It's on Amazon. There's a link to that in my bio and Instagram. And then also where the goodies are of what I do is in my online educational network, which is on Mighty Networks. And in there's 7 modules of self-study material that covers everything from perception of the executive functioning system all the way to higher level skills like planning, organization, decision making, all of that, prioritizing, and everything in between, inhibiting, self-modulating, all of it. We have probably 80 to 90 hours stored recordings of office hours in there, lots of resources for assessment and for therapy. Anything that I develop and create, I plop it in the network, and members have access to all of it at no additional cost. So you're in there as a member, and anything. So that's really the best. That's the best place to go. I am running a second cohort in there. I almost forgot to mention this. We did a cohort the first time back in the fall, and people loved it. So we decided to bring it back again this spring. It's going to be 6 weeks, beginning February 27th. And that's taking place in the educational community. And that is, hold on, my team just changed it's community.terasumpter.com.
Okay.
So that's the website for
community.terasumpter.com.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit more about that cohort. Like what, is it like weekly meetings, or what does it include?
So the cohort is, so it was 8 weeks before, and we found that seemed to be a little bit overwhelming for people. So we've kind of condensed it into 6 weeks. Again, there's so much material that it would be nearly impossible to get it less than 6 weeks. But what it entails is we're doing a module, so which would be one cluster of the executive functioning system at a time. So for example, we'll start with the initial cluster of executive functioning skills, which is perception, focus, sustained attention. And there's about an hour worth of reading material, self-study material, and videos. And then every week we have an office hour where we'll get on live together. And when we do the cohort, the office hours, I tend to do it a little bit more presentation style. People really like that. So I'll do kind of a presentation style with slides and everything for that module, and then everyone can ask questions. Then the next week we move on to another module. So the next module would be working memory, which is one of my favorite topics. I could just do working memory all day, every day. It's just so fascinating. So we talk about verbal working memory, nonverbal working memory, and we talk about assessment and treatment. So the treatment's a huge part of it. How do we address these? Because that's what we need to know. We need to know how to help our kiddos. So we work through each module, all the way up through the higher level executive functioning skills with the office hour each week. And then the best part is that, everybody learns the material. We talk about it. They go, they try it, and then they come back and they'll bring the questions. I tried this. It didn't work great. What do I need to tweak? And that was why I created the community. I had so many offers over the years to do, can you do a class here and this kind of thing. But I wanted to create an environment where we could learn together, and the learning was ongoing. You can't just watch one video and learn about all you need to know for executive functioning. There's trial and error involved, and mentorship that I believe needs to be part of the learning process. And so that's really what the community does. It provides that mentorship. We have a feed, it's like a social media feed within the community where people post their questions. I go in and answer. I have other people who help support that process of answering questions and guiding to information. So it's just a really wonderful network of people. There's roughly about 500 professionals from over 20 different countries in there. So it's really, an SLP or a teacher from Portugal was like, this is how I'm implementing it in my classroom. And I'm over here like, oh my gosh, it's so cool to see it happen, reaching a lot of people. But it really, the community feel of it, you're getting lots of ideas and a lot of people to support the learning process.
Yeah.
So it's pretty
that sounds
good.
Amazing. Sounds like my dream community right there.
No. Yeah,
like it's a great place to be.
It really is. I've had a lot of projects and a lot of things I've done over the years in my career. And I would say this network, this community is probably one of the things I'm the most proud of. It's just, it's really a special place. And, these people I feel like are my friends. Mm-hmm. We've all become friends over the time that everyone's been in there. So it's been great.
Yeah.
And you can come and go. You can cancel. You can leave anytime.
Yeah.
So you could stay in for a month. You could stay in for just the cohort and then be done. There are no hurt feelings when people leave. It's kind of a revolving door, but there's some staple people who've been in there a long time who also help support the community, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So definitely check that out. And yeah, I look forward to learning more about that for myself to develop my own.
Yeah. Oh, that would be so fun to have you in there. You would love it.
Yes, I would.
We don't have a lot of guys, so that's always fun.
We
have one guy who's really, really active. His name is Nick. He's amazing, and I love him. He comes to most of our office hours, and then there's a couple other guys that kind of hang out in the wings and read and comment from time to time. But Nick's always active on our office hours, which is fun. So yeah, I'm always like, where are the dudes? Come on.
Yeah, no, dudes need executive function too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you again.
Thank you.
And for everybody listening out there, thank you for reaching episode 60 of Earn More Tutoring with us. It's been a blast. Tera was the perfect guest to have on for this episode. If you do want to enjoy more episodes of Earn More Tutoring, if you're enjoying this, definitely follow on your podcast subscription of choice. If you check the show notes, there's also some links to our Facebook community, online courses, different things like that. And then my number one thing I'm asking people to do is please just leave a review. If you enjoyed this episode, give your feedback, or if you've been enjoying episodes. I know we got some downloads out there. And so make sure you leave that review. It really helps people learn more about this show so they can earn more tutoring or earn more growing their education practices. So thank you again, Tera. And I hope you have a great rest of the week.
Yeah. Thanks, you too. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate you inviting me on. So this was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.